what I'll share is this, is that because so many people come to see me that feel like somehow they're going backwards, or they don't know what their path is, or they're just, I just hear that often. And so my reminder to them and to anyone listening is that you've never gone off your path. You are always on your path. The path sometimes changes, it's up and down, but you're always moving forward. And I think once you really feel that deeply, then it just feels like you're making progress in some way. And to me, that's important.
Well, we're very excited today to have Felicia Ruiz with us. I'm personally such a big fan, and I think I shared with you when we had our informal phone call that I came across your book at the beginning of the year. We were invited at a resort locally, Castle Hot Springs. And after a really nice walk in nature, I walked into the shop and I saw your book, Earth Medicines. And it just really caught my eye. I could totally feel the energy through the book. So I bought the book and I was really fascinated. So I'm personally really excited to get to know you better, to learn about you, but also to share with our listeners. So welcome.
Thank you. And I love that you felt the energy through the pages, through the photos, through the book. That was a very big intention for me when I read it. I wanted people to feel the energy. So it's very validating to hear that people are feeling it.
It really is. And we've got it on the table as well. And I still feel the energy now. I'm connecting the book with you personally, which is very exciting. So you were an award-winning author, cook in Curandera. And the Curandera part is what really intrigues me, because after I read the book, I studied a little bit about what it means. So I really would love to hear from you. What is a curandera?
Well, it simply means a woman who does healing work. And it's not something that I take lightly, because it's something that your community has to claim you as. So I always share that, especially when I'm speaking on an interview like yours, to share about my work, because it's something that a lot of people don't really know. And I think that word is just starting to kind of come out. Curandera, it's a traditional healer of the community, of the village, of your city, of your town. And usually it's a woman. There are men, those would be a curandero. However, I guess why I mean your community has to claim you is there's a lot of people coming up who are very young and they want so badly to be called a curandera, but it's something that comes with experience and time and trust from the community. So I actually could not call myself a curandera, even though I was doing all of the curandera work, until I think it was 17. One of my teachers, one of my maestras, because we always have many that we apprentice under, finally said I was ready to call myself a curandera. And that was after 23 years.
Wow.
Wow, fascinating.
That's really fascinating. Yeah, I think that's a really nice experience, because my question would have been, what brought you to it? But like you were saying, it was really brought to you through someone else giving you that.
Yes. Well, I think people in my community would call me a curandera, right? My clients, my customers, family members, neighbors, they would come to me throughout my life, to be quite frank, for different things, remedies, kitchen medicine mostly. And because I was apprenticing for very specific things that were ancestral ways of healing that have been passed down for generations, hundreds of generations, I think my teacher, that specific teacher, her name is Patricia, she finally saw it almost like I was ready to cross the threshold and go ahead and claim that word and that name. She said I earned it. And so I really took it seriously. And they had a ceremony for me. The elders in the community, some of the other healers, with my family there. And I earned, it's called a faja, which is your sash, like a woven sash. And so when I'm working with clients, if I'm doing any kind of energetic work, especially, or if I'm giving like a big talk, perhaps with a lot of people there, we're usually expected to wear that sash to, one, protect our energy our umbilical area, but also as a representation of our lineage of where we come from.
Yeah, that's nice. What was that moment for you like that someone told you you're ready?
Mm-hmm. It was actually quite magical because the teacher and I met when I was 22, and we met while in massage school. And so I'm now 52. And so this was 30 years ago. We met while in school, and she was on her Curandera path. She's older than me. And I had moved states. She had her things. We went separate ways. Decades later, one day we just met up again by chance, and we recognized one another. And here I learned she was actually a very well-respected curandera here in Phoenix. And so she just took me under her wing at that time and said, let's get you set up in a way that you're learning all of the different rituals and ceremony and things to provide for the community, because that comes also with age. Now that she was an elder, she's also, I wouldn't say expected, but she feels the responsibility to make sure that the medicine keeps on continuing in the way of our ancestors. And so she saw, wow, like we met 30 years ago and you're still on this path. So that was acknowledgement for her, that she could take me under her wing, like I was ready to kind of graduate to the next level.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I always feel sometimes in life you want a mentor, you want a teacher to come. And I've heard that one saying, it's like the teacher appears when the student is ready. And that really feels like a moment, because I feel like I'm on my path of learning, but you need to, like you're saying, deserve that someone understands that's the path you're going to be on and continue to be on, that you're kind of really valuable, worth doing that and passing on that knowledge.
Yes,
so
because
really
it's
nice.
Not like I wasn't enrolled in a college course, where there was accountability in that way. It was just like mentorship, apprenticeship, helping them when they needed help. Sometimes it meant perhaps, showing up for a group event and all you're doing is carrying things for them. It's showing up in a very humble way, but it was also really empowering because you got to be in their shadow and see what they were doing, and you were learning without them even teaching, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something in people that some people maybe have more tendencies towards understanding the energies, or do you think that everyone with the right effort and humbleness can learn to be a curandera? Do you think there's an innate given talent, let's say?
I think all of it. I think since I was very young, I knew I was going to be some sort of healer. I did not know how that was going to unfold for me. I also think that in my culture, we have, I don't want to use the word like a prophecy, but like even some of the older elders might say like, oh, this one, is going to be the next healer of our family, or this one's going to be the one who's going to continue carrying the medicine. Perhaps they saw a characteristic or a trait in the child when they were small, and that actually happened with me. So my great-grandmother, who was a very well-known curandera in Old Town Albuquerque, she perhaps predicted is a better word, but she predicted that I would be the next one in my family. And perhaps that seed was planted in a way, but also perhaps she saw something in that child, me. And this path has not always been easy, so I don't want to glamorize it. It's really had some... You're around a lot of trauma sometimes. You're hearing a lot of different things. You're in places where other people need to leave and you're asked to be there. So it's not always just like this, oh, I wrote this book and this is really, I'm just walking around all meditating all day. Like it's
I can feel that right now, the way you're expressing that.
Yeah, you choose when you choose to be to honor that calling, it just feels like it just, no matter what, it keeps on showing up for you, and you meet the teachers. people just naturally resonate towards you. And I think that I've always known that. And then when I met that teacher back in 2017, or no, I guess I had to have met her before that because I got my Curandera sash then. She was like a pivotal person for me because she like unlocked the ability for me, I said, to call myself that. And she said it was time for me to come out of the Curandera closet in that way.
That's very interesting, because I think sometimes it's something in us that we need from the outside, a little bit of a confirmation that we then tap into our inner strength and wisdom and energy.
And as soon as she did, I felt like so many more things unfolded for me on my path.
Yeah.
Like that, I think acceptance and just surrendering to the fact that no matter what I was doing, it did not matter what I was doing. If I had my restaurant at the time, like people would show up for me to make them a medicinal dish, an herbal remedy. People would just show up for me to listen to them and give them suggestions. And that was happening without me having like a little sign on the door saying anything. It just was, that's been my entire life.
Yeah, so people could feel that healing and that energy.
Yes.
So was food your starting point of helping people? Did you use food through that? Or?
No, because I started in massage school, I would say my hands and my energy were my starting point. So I had a office, not very, large. It was about the size of this room, which is a good size room for a table. And I had a little area to sit. And what I noticed was people would come, and what was different about me is that I had like this apothecary, and I would create little herbal teas for them based on what I felt they needed energetically, but also if it was something that they were, perhaps they were feeling sluggish or something, or sleep, and I would prepare little teas for them. And then they started asking me, well, can I buy that to take home, to brew at home? So then I started selling the teas, and then that just turned into my own little herbal practice that I was not really even, I would say I was traditionally trained, but I wasn't formally trained. But people would get great results, and I think it was because I was reading their energy of what I thought they needed with the plant. I was pairing those up.
I'm really fascinated with plants, and it's just really from a young age, really, my dad would take me to I was born in Germany and raised in Germany, to a herb garden. Like there was a public herb garden. He would teach me what all the plants are. So I feel like I've really kind of grown up with that. And I recently, because my dad passed away about 2.5 years ago, so through that I really connected even more with herbs and plants again. And what I'm really interested in, and it sounds a bit that's the way you've been doing as well, is to have the knowledge about plants, but then also get to know the plant and who they are, and really connecting with the plant, and then connecting with the people. So it's not just a knowledge and a remedy. And I think that's really the way you were describing it.
Exactly. You hit that perfectly, because I think I don't like to use the terms Eastern and Western medicine. I talk about that in the book, being a very Eurocentric way of thinking, that the world's like divided in Europe. But I think that for many people, here, I will say specifically in the United States, we treat the symptoms. And so it is very much like a pill mentality, I would say. So it's like oh, you have a headache, take this herb, or oh, you can't sleep, take this herb. But there's really not any communion with it. There's no relationship. There's it's very fragmented. And so I think that from my understanding with my teachers, and actually several teachers from different places in Europe, there seems to be a little bit more of an understanding that you don't need an apothecary of 100 plants. It feels like our ancestors just used a little handful, and then they knew it so well, no matter where you're from. Our grandmas all did that.
Yeah, I love that. That's really how I kind of study plants, is just know your 5 really well. That's kind of what my goal is right now, because I think there's so much, one plant can do so much from what I'm learning. And then I'm curious, because you were saying something happened to you when your teacher gave you the confidence. How do you feel like when you treat clients, how much of their own inner energy comes out through your work, and how much are we like our own healers?
Well, I see people throughout the week, and I tell them my intention for them just as much as I want to hear their intention for seeing me. And I always tell them my intention is to help them reveal or discover, remember that they are their own healer. Yeah. I always tell everyone I carry so much healing and magic and power, but it's just for me. I can't do anything for you but help you find your own. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really nice way to describe it. And how much of it do you think with people that are coming looking, they're always looking for an answer and not realizing that it is really everything comes from within? Because we see that, and we've done a lot of coaching and things ourselves where you actually get to the end, you realize somebody's just guiding you, but everything you need to achieve is very much from within yourself.
So many people that come to see me, regardless if it's for a recent autoimmune, diagnosis, to just simply wanting to eat better, or maybe I see people for so many things, and not everyone's seeing me for herbal suggestions. It just comes out that way. That I feel that we go almost like in a circle, because they always say, well, wow, I was at the doctor with them probably for 12 minutes, and then we're sitting an hour and a half. And then because we had the opportunity for me to hold space for them, I mean, I'm asking about what have your dreams what have they been like? What type of water are you drinking? Are you getting sunshine? Like, I'm asking so many questions that by the end, it's usually not even me saying, wow, like I need to take inventory of how I have been showing up in the world. And so that's what I mean. It's usually just me reminding them, and I'm not really doing anything but just helping them say, I haven't really thought about this for a very long time.
Yeah, that's really nice, because like you were saying, like giving space, because I feel like the world we're living in, technology is amazing, but it's also crazy. And having that moment to really think about it, I think we don't take enough pauses and moments, and we remind ourselves a lot about that too, because you can just get in that wheel and going faster and faster, and there's so much information flooding towards us. So just that moment, because then I guess that inner voice comes out too when you take that moment.
Oh yeah, I hear often people will come to tell me that they want to simply sharpen their intuition, that they don't believe they have one anymore. And that's always so, it hurts my heart when I hear that, because I think, wow, like they've completely, they're distrusting their own compass, and how sad that so many people are walking around like that. And so just reminding them, instead of turning the TV on right when you wake up, like maybe start this way. And we make like, we call them adjustments. I call them adjustments. I say, don't do anything, rash and crazy. Just start with adjustments, and I'm holding you accountable. And even though we might not ever see one another again, they always remember. If I bump into them, I remember you told me. And so, but it's like we need that sometimes for someone to say, I'm holding you accountable. Yeah. And I'm holding you accountable, your own self accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a nice energetic accountability too. Because like you're saying, if you don't see someone, but there is that feeling that they leave with from you.
Yes.
That connects them to that.
That's what people say, that they feel like I also have given them permission to show up and call themselves a healer too.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I want to touch on, like in the book, what I was so fascinated with is the elements you're talking about, the 4 elements: earth, fire, water, and air. And I've been trained in classical feng shui. We're working with sacred geometry for our spaces. And to me, it's fascinating that we think about those 4 elements that are represented in the body as well. I'd love to hear a bit more from you about how you identify that and how you then use it. And if there's any kind of advice you can give as well to recognize those elements within us.
Well, I think within us, every element offers something as medicine for us, you know, air to breathe, we need food to eat, things like that. But people, I think, don't really see how each person, and I think people say this with astrology, but I really think that each person is aligned with one element more than another. And usually once we tap into what that is, we can often see what the imbalance is. I don't know enough about Chinese medicine, but I kind of feel like it's very similar in that way.
Yeah.
And I take that even into my home. So sometimes when I'm working with people and we go through all of the elements, we first start my sessions with calling in of the 4 directions, and we have an element, or I have an element based on my tradition that is aligned with each direction. So the north is one element, the south, and so on. And we'll go through all of the directions, and then I'll ask the client, like, which direction, which element are you feeling the most now, and which one are you feeling that you're lacking? So if they're lacking something, then I'll even ask about their home. Let's talk about what your home is like. And because I'm so blessed to work mostly from home, my home feels, everyone always says your home feels so good. What is it that you do? And they want to know, like, is it the smell? Is it what is it? You know?
I want to know what you do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's an imprint of my energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way I can explain it. So I can't really go into someone else's home, perhaps like a feng shui person says, and do this, do that. And it's like such an extension of my aura and me that's what I try to teach people with the elements when we see, like, wow, like, I've never thought about the fact that I have all this plastic in my house and fake plants and this and that. It's not just the visual. Yeah. I tell them you have to bring life to the house. So we talk about that. So it's perhaps similar, like, to feng shui, in that there's the elements bring different things, but there's no specific placement, but definitely tuning up the house. But I guess it begins with the person being the most important ingredient.
Yeah. It's interesting. I want to go back to how you were describing there's the different elements and how you take someone through it to find out what the imbalance is. Can you elaborate on that? I'm really curious to find out how that process works.
Yeah, I'll just use the example because it's fresh in my mind. But yesterday I saw someone, and we go through our calling in of the 4 directions. And after we were done, I said, which element are you feeling you are right now in this moment? Because she was there to see me for challenges that she was going through. And she said, I feel like fire. And she really identified with fire, like, so deeply, but not in the passionate, like, energizing, energetic way. It was more of like her body was inflamed. She had so much anger and rage, and it was coming out in every way as fire. So I said, okay, we're going to look to water to help cool you down. And then that was the rest of our session, was to really discuss those things. And then her having the opportunity to think more deeply of, like, wow, like, I'm really embracing fire right now, and what are things that I can do to cool, whether it's with food, whether it's with water, cooling foods, cooling water, things like that.
And everybody's different. I'm sure you see so many different kinds of people. How do people respond to your methods? I mean, how many people don't really know anything about you or what you do, and they come to you and it's brand new, versus they've got some idea, and then how do they respond?
Well, I am very blessed that my clients mostly see me through word of mouth. And so someone that had very good results, I don't know if results is the best, but they had a great experience with me that they have recommended me to a friend or loved one. I do have people that fly in from other cities or will make the drive from LA and Tucson and other places that don't know me, didn't have someone recommend, me to them, but somehow they're also coming to me based on following their intuition. And so once they get there, especially if they've traveled far, I tend to extend the amount of time I'm with them because they really went out of their way to come to see me. And I don't know how to say it without sounding like, but I mean, I think I see people in a way that other people don't see people.
Yeah.
And so they just feel so seen and heard and held and listened to and lighter. And just when they leave, I just feel like I'm so proud of them, even though I just met them that day. Like I just feel, it kind of gave me goosebumps to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really beautiful how you said that, because you're very humble. And because I can, like I said, I felt the energy through the book. Just meeting you today in person and then you sitting here, I can totally feel that, not even being in a session with you. So I think it's definitely coming from you.
And that's not to say, thank you for saying that. It's not to say that everyone has left feeling that way. You know, I would say 99% of the people who see me are women. And I just feel like I offer something for them that they really do feel heard and seen. Some of the men that come to see me are usually the husbands of the wives that come or so on. But I think that energy is something that in our day also, I almost hate to say this, but there's so much like competition, even in the spiritual like wellness world and the healer world, and I don't like that. And so, you know, if people come to see me, I want, even if they're doing very similar work to me, I want them to just leave feeling just absolutely, the only word I can really think of is like just so energetically held.
Yeah. That's really nice, like you say that, because I think there's always the danger with something becoming more popular, and wellness and healing, I think, definitely is. I think partially it's that everyone had more of a wake up through the pandemic and like pausing and really understanding ourselves and asking what are our lives about and how do we want our life to be. But then with that comes obviously the opportunity to make a business out of it, or for it to go in a different direction than just the intention behind it. So I think that's nice the way you were saying that it's not about the competition for you.
No, I mean, my fees, my exchange of money for people has always been on a community sliding scale since I can remember. So I never want anyone to feel like they can't afford to come to see me, you know, and there's people that will pay more than the scale to help with the other people that come. And that's what I love about what I do too. It's for everybody.
Yeah. When you mention community, because I think it's really important for us to understand, and you're in our community, you're very fortunate that you're local to us. How do you think communities can heal by having people that do the work you do? How is that from one individual really spreading out to a wider field?
Oh, well, I mean, there's communities within communities. You have your own community at your office, and we're a community here as people here in our valley. We're a community in our state. Like it can be as small or as big as we want it. The first thing that came to mind as I was saying that is like, I have worked with a number of people who work in like those cubicles that seem void of all life. I've never been and worked in one, but they explain them to me when we're going through the energetics of their day. And when they tell me there's just these boxes that feel like lifeless, and they're having difficulties at work, I will give them all sorts of ideas and suggestions that can help that little area feel very special for them, like a little portal for them, help them get them through the day, and they begin to feel more productive, lighter, less exhausted, and all of that just from all of the things we've like kind of feng shuied their little cubicle space, right? And then what happens is their work community sees something is different with that person, and perhaps their cubicle mate in that pod wants to know, well, what are you doing? Like you seem different. And then they're talking to each other, and now things are happening. And so I've seen it impact the cubicle pods just from the people that I've worked with.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, the world we're in as architects and designers, and especially more in the Rome where a lot of people get to experience the spaces we design, we focus on hospitality. It's really, we're very interested in, apart from the aesthetics, what else do the spaces do? And what else can we do by choosing the right materials, creating energies in a space? So I'd be really curious if you're willing to share how we could take your wisdom and your work with energies into the spaces so we make sure we provide better spaces and healthier spaces for people.
Yeah, I love this question. I gave a talk on something similar to this to a group of architects, and they were intrigued by my ideas, but it also to them, I think, made sense. And so I'll share some of the things, and I think you being a feng shui practitioner will also agree with some of them. And I always tell people, no matter the room, the space, the cubicle, do everything you can to acknowledge all four elements. And so that can be difficult in a space that you don't really have a control over. And so sometimes we make even little secret pockets of things that they can just carry in their bag and take out to put by their computer, something that's special to them. And people always get a little bit confused even with like air. Well, how am I supposed to do air? You know, I can't light incense and I can't do this and that. And so I will remind them, well, air, at least in my culture and many cultures around the world, is connected to our ancestors because we can't see air and we can't, we feel air, right? And that's why it's connected to our ancestors. So sometimes I'll say, just bring something little that perhaps belonged to a favorite ancestor of yours and have it by your desk somewhere. And that's your representation for air. It could be a button, a pen. It doesn't have to be anything big. And so it's just helping them rethink even what that object could possibly be connected to. It doesn't have to be I think people are afraid, oh, she's going to have me have like feathers and, you know, all these things hanging all over. And I'm like, no, it can be as private as you need it to be.
That's really fascinating because for me, the next thought would have been a feather with the air element, but the ancestral part, that's really, really interesting. And what I love about that too is that the wisdom and the energy that we're sharing, and I'm myself really working on that, connecting more with my ancestors because sometimes I think you just forget a little bit about that something because it's invisible to you. It's like to really have that energy and have that strength in your back. So how would you say you connect with your ancestors apart from symbols like you were saying?
They connect with me. I'm very lucky. I grew up with parents who had an ancestor altar. So we had a very large altar, probably like 6 feet tall, with just pictures of loved ones and flowers and frankincense burning and copal burning and just all sorts of things always happening. So I feel like that realm was always open to us as children. And since I can remember having my very first place, I always had like a little area that was an altar. And now my daughter's 23 and she does the same thing because she grew up with that. So for me, it's not about how do I connect with the ancestors. It's I kind of turn it around of like, how can I let the ancestors connect with me? And that's what I teach my clients, because I think it's very disempowering to say, well, how do I connect with them? And it's like, no, they're already connecting with you. It's more of like, how can I receive their information and their wisdom and their love from a space that many people might not believe in.
Yeah.
But I believe that. And I've had a number of incredible things that I've kept a log of probably since I was 20 years old, of things that I have witnessed and have happened to me from the ancestors.
Wow.
I know that they are always around.
Yeah. I mean, that really helped me because like you're saying, I've always felt like I needed to do something and I needed to feel that. I kind of feel an energy, but it's really nice to say that you rather create a space and an energetic space that they can come to, and that's the way you connect. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think people want to feel like I bought all of the ingredients to now sit and talk to my ancestor. I'm like, well, they were with you buying the ingredients. They were with you. They've been with you. It's more about just actually knowing you don't need anything. You really don't need anything. You just need to get still and just invite them to sit with you.
That's beautiful.
Sorry. Just going back to those 4 elements, because I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, in feng shui and even the sacred geometry we're doing, sometimes there's more of a harmonization by amplifying one more than the other, but you were talking more about just bringing each in. Is that in the same quantities, in the same, bringing that harmony?
I guess I don't have, I love, by the way, sacred geometry, and I love that whole concept, but I think because a lot of people that I'm working with don't have the means to have like everything that perhaps someone else would be able to put together with all of the fountain and everything. I'm just giving them the absolute bare minimum and things that they might even have already at home. I also remind them that we are doing this to honor earth and ancestors and your spirit, and there's no wrong way. So maybe that's I don't want them to feel like it's one is greater than the other and there's a formula, and like I said, everyone's different, and you know, some people can walk into a log cabin and feel just so great, where another person might be like, this is too much wood for me. You know, so it's like it has to be fine-tuned for the person. I mean, that empowering that you give to people, I think that's really beautiful, because I think when we study and learn some of those modalities, I mean, my hope for us is really to almost take some of that wisdom and then instill it into our own way of doing things. So like you're saying, it's not such a formula, or you don't feel like something is good or bad. Right. There's no judgment. There's no formula. There's no judgment. It's just an invitation to say, how can I bring the elements in? And again, just take an assessment of their home, and not even thinking like, wow, I never really thought to take an inventory of how much, like I said, I use the plastic. For a lot of people just have plastic plates, plastic everything, so much plastic, and they're not realizing they're in communion with this object that carries, to me, like no essence,
no
like
life.
Where, you know, wood, even though it's, you know, it was alive at one point, it had like its own life force, and that's like, we're putting that energy back into that piece.
Have you seen, because we were talking about earlier, the different elements in our bodies and people connecting with those elements and seeing what's kind of off balance for them. Have you seen that particular, what's within your body is then translating to people's spaces as well? Is there a connection between the two?
A little bit. Sometimes people that are feeling really dense, like I think that they're almost like stuck in the mud. You know, a lot of our phrases, I think, even come from these examples. And they, I feel like they even dress just very heavy, if that makes sense. Like just the colors, everything, like they never even want to wear a color. They're just so heavy. And then I'll meet people that I think are very airy-fairy, and they're just like, you know, so light and always in the brightest and flowy colors. And so it's like, I think we do kind of bring that out into our everyday. And so you get, again, no judgment. It's just what they're feeling. And sometimes, though, if somebody is feeling really dense and heavy and sluggish, even their digestion, everything, I'll remind them, like, well, when's the last time you wore anything colorful? And, you know, they'll think about that, and they're like, I have been wearing black every single day for years. And then we'll make like a little adjustment, and we'll say, let's just start with maybe perhaps a little something here, you know, on your throat area, just to kind of give you a pop of color. And then next thing you know, I'm getting little messages on Instagram of this outfit they bought. But it color, to me, it's as you can see, I love color. I love expressing myself with color. And I think that that's part of my own energetic imprint, is I want people to feel that too.
Yeah. Like you were explaining earlier, sometimes it's just open a little bit of that little vent inside, and then the true kind of feeling can really come out.
Oh, yeah.
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 I'm thinking, like, for us as the designers and architects, so we were talking about the energies in the space, we always wonder as well how much our intention, right at the beginning, at the seed before we start a project, and our energy mirrors in the space. What would be your kind of viewpoint on intention when we do our work? How important is that?
Well, when you are planning your space, you're writing a blueprint, I would assume, of some sort. And so I think that's like your own like intention, but I think deeper beyond that, I would really, of course you don't have to take anything that I'm saying, but I would write it down. What is your intention for this space? And then put it somewhere really special to read that every day during that project. You know, when I have anything that I'm doing, I love to write. There's power in writing. We tend to have everything on the computer, and just to write that intention out, I feel like you're sealing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your intention.
Yeah, definitely.
It is a big intention of ours to always do that with our team, excuse the pun, but it's so important because we set projects up with that intention, and we sort of set that intention into a narrative that sometimes we'll present to a client, and we try and maintain it the best we can throughout the entire project. But things then after a while become out of our control. Maybe the budget doesn't conform with what we want to do, or the client has different ideas or doesn't like everything. But we still try and stay strong so that we know that we get to the end of our process with that intention having been carried through. And it sounds like it's a big part of your process too.
Well, in my own process, whether it was when I was writing this book and the other ones now coming, it's like I write down what my intention is for that piece of work. You know, even before I press go for an Instagram post or reel, I get really quiet and I say my intention is to reach the people that need to see this information, that it is spread wisely, my intention, and I say it out loud. And sometimes I'll write it down, and then when I'm finally feeling really good about it, and I read it again, and then I say, or something better, and then I press go. That's really nice. The same thing. Like, you know, you have your bones of the intention, but then at some point you also surrender to or something better, and then let that unfold.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, because I think there's so much power in our energy, but then it's also understanding we're not the only thing. We're all connected, and there's something really higher than ourselves, and to say or something better, because sometimes we can't think of the ideal. We have a certain thing in our head, and something else is really kind of meant to happen. So that's a beautiful reminder. Thank you.
Did you have an intention when you came on our podcast?
My intention was, honestly, as I was driving here, I was thinking, you know what, this is exciting, Felicia, because I've had to speak on so many different platforms, but mostly on herbalism and healing. And so my intention really was to just, well, I don't want to share the whole intention, but my intention was that I wanted to be able to unlock also a piece of my energy for the people that were going to hear this, because I felt like not everybody that was listening might even know what a curandera was, and I wanted the opportunity to keep planting and pollinating my seeds in that way. To remind people in that way. So that was kind of my intention.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
That is.
So I'm thinking back to what we're doing when we're thinking about hotels and wellness. That's a really big part of what we focus on and what we're seeing in the hospitality world as well. There's a lot of movement into people understanding ancient tradition and wisdom. We've traveled to Mexico and have done beautiful temazcal ceremonies, cacao ceremonies. And I'm curious from your angle how you see that being a benefit and how you see there might also be a danger in it becoming too widespread, and how we kind of really keep the truthfulness and the ancientness and the wisdom from it and not diluting it too much.
Right, that's a great question. I think that the word respect comes to mind immediately. How I'm trying to say this in the kindest way too. I would say in the last 10 years, I've seen so many people go to, say, Peru and sit with someone to do, an ayahuasca ceremony, and then they're like back on the plane 2 days later, and then I'm now holding space for them because they're going through so many problems because they weren't resolved in Peru with that shaman or with the leader that was there. I think that is a big fear for me. I don't want to see what I'm doing commodified, because again, it took me so long to earn my place in this space, but also that doesn't mean that other people can't do what I'm doing. I just don't want it to be adulterated or somehow just like, I want the medicine to evolve and change because that's what we do as humans. However, I feel like there's such great access to it that a lot of people are not getting the proper benefits, and they're just not they're not educated. They're very ignorant on how it's been used in the past. And I'm also seeing that a lot of people that are doing it are actually not the people that it belongs to. And I guess to answer your question is like diluting it, that is something that I really see already happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like you're saying, it's very powerful. And I think especially plant medicine is very powerful. And like you were saying, sometimes it's underestimating the time it takes to process as well. Because I think you hear a lot of people maybe doing some of those sessions several times. And I mean, it's such an access to a world we don't understand. And these pictures and images that come up, like you're saying, I think it's really understanding the process of that. And for me, it's really seeing it as a ritual and a ceremony. Because I feel like for me, even with my background culture being half German, half Arabic, exploring other cultures, there's a really respect for understanding the intention of it and the wisdom and the ancient philosophies that come with that. And just to really make sure that we sometimes don't do too much as well, because it can, I mean, I've experienced this, but there's so much you open up with plants or even just talking to plants. There's things that surprise us, and then suddenly you were like, wow, that was way more than I expected.
Right, and if you don't have someone to hold your hand and be with you in the past, all around the world, whatever medicine the community was working with, you didn't just like pop in and have an ayahuasca ceremony and then you were off in your car the next day. It was something that was definitely happening over a length of time, and then you would go back to the healer to explain all of the things that were happening, and then they could help you with the unfolding process. And that's where I think it's a lot of that dilution and the misunderstanding that you're just fixed after having some type of ritual or ceremony. And then a lot of those people are returning from places far away and very lost and confused.
Yeah, I can relate to that because I feel like we're saying earlier, there's so much information out there and there's so much in that realm that is just sometimes really mind-blowing to me how much you can do. And I almost fell a little bit into that trap of thinking, oh, there's the next thing I'm trying. And then suddenly you find yourself really confused about what you experienced. So I'm really like paring things back for myself now and doing one thing and processing it, or even with the plants, diving way deeper into it than like a wisdom sponge absorbing all this knowledge and then not really being confused and not knowing what to do with it. So that I really made that experience for myself.
Right, and the fact that people feel that they can only have some type of authentic experience to find their inner self by traveling 2,000 miles away, when you could do such great healing in your own community, probably on a deeper level, knowing that you're going to have someone to work with. It might not be the same plant medicine, but I think that's important. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a balance, isn't it? Because on one hand, there must be a positive when you shine a light on a culture and ancient wisdom, you bring it into, a wider audience. That's could be a benefit to those cultures. But then, like Anissa said, it gets diluted or monetized or manipulated. Then it starts to actually lose its value. So there's this balancing act, which is probably what you're experiencing at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, this interview could go a completely different direction because I have so much to say on that.
Right.
I'm just going to.
Okay.
Well,
I'm just going to sit here. Because yes, it is. There is so much to share on that of what I've witnessed firsthand with people. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it comes back to almost you when you started off about how long it takes to become a curandera and the 30 years you've put into it. We live in a world now where it's magic pills, instant gratification. I think you were mentioning some of the younger people within your community want to be a curandera like that, not having the patience to go what you've gone through. And it's in every aspect of our lives
Yes,
now.
it's not just in curanderismo,
No.
but I do have very, let's say, 20-somethings, and that on occasion they will reach out to me and email me and ask if I have some sort of, apprenticeship, like a year-long apprenticeship, so that they can be a curandera, and I listen to them, but I also remind them that even if we were to do an apprenticeship for 1 year and they are 22, it is probably not, they're not probably ready to earn that title yet, that, even if you were not trying to become a healer, or like, again, we are all healers, right? But if you're going to become a healer for your community, no matter who you are, there's experience that comes with the decades,
Right.
with just like jobs and life and relationships and everything, illnesses that, even if you're not trying to become a healer, that you just don't know when you're 20 years old, you know?
And like you were saying, Ore, there is such a responsibility as well, because it's not all beautiful, like you were saying, experiencing some things that are just really hard, and understanding how to protect yourself from that as well. And actually going back on that note, what are because you were mentioning the sash you're wearing for protection, what are some of your other tools that you are using to protect your own energy when you have an energy exchange with clients?
Yeah, so I have long hair, and not always, but when I'm around a big group of people, I'm almost always in braids, or I have my hair tied up like I do today. Not that I was assuming that you two were going to, I was needing an energy protection, but it's just, I knew I had things to do, and it's just a way of protecting oneself, because I was always taught that your hair is like an antenna, and it's just out there picking up things all the time. I've also had quite traumatic things happen to me with my long hair as a child, with people cutting my hair without my permission at school and things like that. So I do feel very vulnerable with my hair down in public spaces, and so I tend to braid it. And I would also say, if I am having to be around a big group of people, and maybe I need to give a talk or something, and I'm expected to be on stage or behind the screen or something, I do like to wear turquoise protective stones and jewelry and things like that, like little amulets, I think. Yeah, amulets.
And do you have a very disciplined routine for yourself? Because we have sayings like in the UK, the cobbler always has the worst shoes, because when you work in the industry, you tend to neglect your own self. But I assume you will hold yourself very precious.
I've always liked that saying too, by the way, because I actually do take shoes to the cobbler because I like sustainability. But I think I really hold myself accountable that this, my body, my physical body, is my first and most sacred home. So I will not be useful to other people, in my opinion, if I am not feeling well, and that's mind, heart, spirit, everything, body. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I do really do my best to stay well.
I think that's a really nice reminder, because often it's that we feel like, oh, we're selfish when we take care of ourselves, but it's the simple saying as well, you need to put the oxygen mask on you first in the plane to help others. And I think that's a really nice reminder. And I really feel that too when I do something for myself, and I do it not just for myself, but knowing that if I'm in balance, I can then be a much better person when I meet people, when I'm in the office. And that again then radiates, because we're always talking about the power of a nice smile, a nice word versus being grumpy, and you affect someone else and it's a ripple effect, and someone else's day is going really bad because of that.
That's definitely true. We feel that all of the time. Yeah. And I think the wellness industry really took grasp of the self-care, that whole phrase. And I really prefer like collective care, or care of the self, to remind people that, like you just said, if you're working towards keeping yourself and not like in a maintenance, just like all maintenance, holistic maintenance, then, you're going to be better as a team, and it just keeps expanding.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly for me, it's something that's come as I've got older and with maturity. Sometimes when you're late teens or 20s, you're not really thinking about the future, or my body's going to last forever. But as you get older, you start to realize how precious it is. And certainly for me, growing up in England, that wasn't really the case. But since we've been together, and Anisa had much more intuition around protecting her mind and body, I've certainly appreciated adapting that lifestyle too.
You're very open there, because we were talking earlier about how you have a lot of women that come to see you, and then the husband gets kind of like introduced to that. So I feel really grateful that I have someone that's so open to that, and I can share that experience as well. And I think it's really important for our work, because we like to combine architecture with the interiors. For us, it's like you're saying, it's a holistic approach. It's just not there's one element and then there's the other one, and the two don't speak together. Because I think that again is the energy and the wholeness that comes together. So it's like you're looking at health holistically.
Right. And also, I think the value of even relationship, I'm very, very, very blessed to have an amazing partner. And my husband, we call one another divine compliments, because I don't feel like I'm completing him or he's completing me or anything. It's just like we really do complement one another, and he too is very open to all of the different things that he has, had to, I'm sure, taste and eat and be a part of, before it went out into the real world. But I think that in itself is an example of working on yourself, as you want to show up as a better person for not just you, but for everybody.
Absolutely. One thing sprang to my mind when we were talking about sustainability earlier. When we do hotel renovations, sometimes we really try to see if there's elements in the room that we can reuse and not tear everything down, or even with buildings. And what I'm always interested in, either with doing something that's existing and had a lot of use and a lot of energies, or you're buying secondhand items, repurpose them, is there anything energetically you can share to make sure that if there has not been a really good energy either in the building or in that piece of furniture or a piece of clothing you're buying, as a simple remedy to clear that energy?
Yes, I love reusing and finding unique pieces. And, even the blouse I'm wearing, it's probably from the 70s. And if I find something, whether it's at a thrift store or if I'm at a flea market or something, I don't just grab it and go buy it. I have to hold it for a little bit. And maybe I'll walk around the store with it. And I don't know if this feels too strange, but I will just hold it and see if this feels good. And if it feels like something about this does not feel right, then I'll just return it back to the shelf. If I take it home with me, of course I launder it and things, but I also energetically clean it. So I tend to spritz a lot of things that I buy after I wash them. Or actually, I spritz them before I wash them because I just say I don't even want that in my house or my car or my washer. I have Florida water, Agua Florida, which is, there's a recipe in my book, and I have it in my car. I have it in my house, and everything that I bring home, I just do that. And I actually take it with me for when I travel and clean the room too.
That's a good reminder, because I've done several of your recipes, from a face mask to the incense cones, actually a foot bath for Ben with the rosemary because he had a really bad headache.
Yeah, I did that, yeah.
We've done the Sky Nation dream sachets, but the Florida water, that's still on my list. So I'm glad you reminded me of that.
Well, it'll, being that you're also Arabic, you said?
Yeah, half Arabic, yes.
Half Arabic, then you can just go right up the street and get some good rose water and orange blossom water to make the recipe, and that will connect you with your ancestors too.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me because, like I was saying earlier, I've always, when I was young, I always knew there is other cultures in me, and I obviously know the two I was born with, but I've always had that interest in a lot of other cultures. And I feel like there is more access really to, let's say, through yoga, through the Indian culture. I feel very connected when we're in Mexico to the Mayan culture. But I've recently really come to understand that I need to search my own culture too, and that's why I was intrigued when we were talking about connecting with the ancestors. Especially after my dad passing away, that's kind of the herbs that made me do that, is to really understand, okay, what's in my culture and what is something that I can bring and pass on. So I'm going to be exploring that.
Yeah, I remind everyone too that, going back to when you were saying about people using plant medicines, say ayahuasca and things like that. Why do people feel as a consumer that we have to go so far when, maybe our own culture has things that are just as powerful, but maybe they're just not as known, or they haven't been commercialized yet. Yeah. But I know a lot about the ancestors that are in my DNA, right? And I know that I have also Moroccan lineage, and ever since I was little, I was just kind of obsessed, actually, at one point of my life as a child with like all things Morocco, not knowing until much later when my parents were actually in Morocco, and everyone kept talking to my dad in Arabic because they thought he was Moroccan.
Wow.
And then later it came to find out, we went ahead and did a DNA test, and I was like, wow, like I'm 6% Moroccan. Like that was a big number for me. Then I thought perhaps like the ancestors are coming through in that way for me, that I was like so obsessed with Morocco as a 13-year-old. Why? I didn't have anything really in my home that was saying like Morocco or anything, but it was just something. So I think they come, that's what I was saying, is like they come to speak through you in those ways. And so I'll have to check my test again, because I know they say as the more tests come, the percentages change and things like that, but
it gets more accurate.
So I'm just curious. And when I was in Morocco, I have to say I felt as at home there as I did when I was in Mexico City, in a very different way. And even in Santa Fe, and where my family is all from, and what I thought about, and I don't mean to get completely off topic, but I think it's also interesting, being that you're both in architectural things and interior, because in Santa Fe and in Taos and all of those areas where all my family is from, my grandmother had an adobe home. My mother was born in an adobe home with a dirt floor, and that's all my family was born in adobe homes. And I just always remember as a child, in the adobe homes, we had the entry to the door was turquoise blue, or very almost like a cornflower blue, like that blue, indigo. And it was always something that we have had for protection, to protect whoever was coming in and out. And it wasn't until, I was probably 32 years old or something, I read that, and it made so much sense. I was like, well, of course, when the Moroccans were in Spain and then they were expelled, then they got taken to Mexico, then those people traveled up the Rio Grande, ended up in Taos and Santa Fe, because Santa Fe is the first capital of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
They brought with them the doorway being that color, and then it just like blew my mind, because it was like this full circle moment of realizing that all of these Moroccan people, North African people that had went to Mexico and then traveled up, brought their traditions with them, including our ovens that we make bread in.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's really nice. Yeah.
That's fascinating. And that's what's so intriguing for us right now. We're learning about sacred geometry, because it's about bringing that wisdom of the past into the current future, because we can get lost with modern technology, even in architecture and design, and wanting to design these amazing glass buildings and structures, which do look incredible. But it's making sure that the occupants feel well in them, that you're not actually making people sick by these almost sculptures in the sky is essentially what they are. So blending the two, because we want it to be approachable and modern, but be anchored in that ancient philosophy and wisdom is super intriguing to us.
I agree. And I think with so many like skyscraper type buildings, it's must be a challenge, when you're up in the air like that. But I think that I love blending ancient wisdom with modern wisdom. And my cousin, who actually is an architect, we talk about indigenous futurism. We always have these interesting
beautiful
conversations about bringing our ideas into the future and what will that look like. So we always have all these funny conversations.
I love that. I would love to brainstorm with you on that.
Architect in LA, and we always we will talk sometimes for like an hour just on what we think, how can we bring things into the future that are still rooted in how will our family evolve and our lineage evolve.
Yeah, that's really cool.
You touched on your book earlier and just glancing at, when I read Earth Medicine, I wonder, are the nutrients in the earth being depleted? Have they still got the same qualities as they did with your ancestors?
For none of our ancestors, for everywhere. I think around the world, we've extracted so much. And so, I think the earth is always going to be around. I think we are ruining ourselves. And so, I tell people, I guess I need to be on like an anti-plastic campaign or something, but it's like, I wish we could understand how beautiful it is, to reuse and repurpose things, and understand that we can only take so much, and our ancestors probably just cannot believe some of the things that we are doing now and how disconnected we are. And hopefully people are coming back to the understanding that this is what, when you were saying that when you were younger, you didn't have the same self-care practices as you do as you're old, becoming older. And now I think that I'm hoping as a planet or a society that we're also figuring that out together, because we have depleted a lot of the minerals and everything from the earth.
Yeah. I feel like the younger generation has way more of an awareness now when we think back, and we love to talk to students because we just really feel like whatever we're learning, if we can pass that on to someone that is so much in their hands of what the future is going to be, especially about architecture and design. And I feel like there is such an openness there. There's not a question about it. It's like there's an innate knowing already and connecting way more with what it means to extract things from the earth and what we're doing to the planet. So it's really exciting for us to see. It's hard because until that generation really has the power to implement, it's going to take a little bit of time. So I feel very responsible because our industry is there's so much about resources, material, wasting. And I think it's just such a responsibility we have. And it's not easy because it always, like I think you were mentioning earlier, often it comes down to monies, to budgets, to time. And when we, during COVID, for us, this was a real reset to think about, okay, how do we want to work within our industry? Who do we want to work with? And it's really reformulating and sometimes making a statement and giving an example as well of that things can be done differently. That sometimes, like you're saying, it doesn't have to cost more to build more efficiently and more environmentally conscious and health conscious, because it's about the environment, but also about us in the building. Like we have a lot of toxic buildings when we're talking about plastic. So I take that very seriously, but I'm also trying to find a way with more lightness, because I think a lot of people maybe don't go that route because it feels heavy. So like really in a light way to introduce that as a new idea.
Yes, I agree. And I think the children that are coming up now, because I don't want to say me personally, but us as older people, it's like we have left them, and just with a lot. And I think any of us that are in our 40s, 50s, 60s, we were in a time when I think everything just artificial and processed, and all of that was just part of how we grew up. And I think now we're starting to really see how that is not benefiting any of us. And so it is a lot of, I think, also unlearning. I know and meet a lot of people that are my age who they don't want to change what they're doing. And so I think it is this younger group that's coming up that my intention for them is to go back to the ancient ways and somehow bring that forward so that we can bring all of those elements back into our spaces again, and people won't have to see me about working in a cubicle. And it's so just compounded and tied together. And that's where I think we're missing the mark as a culture, as humanity. Like, it's just so divisive and polarizing. And I feel it. We see it with politics. We see it within our own city. And I want to just remind people, like, we're all here together breathing the same air. And we need to just do our best to make it best for the next, generations coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just that awareness of how connected everything is. For me, there is no separation. And for me, there's a lot of times when I wake up in the morning, even today I shared it's my birthday today. And I'm super excited about it. I'm extremely blessed about my life. I was so grateful that you said yes to this interview and on being on my birthday. But I also woke up a little bit thinking about how blessed I am, but also how the world feels. Like, that really came to me today, of knowing that there's a lot of sadness in the world, and I think there's a lot of struggle, there's a lot of division. So today I was really conscious about that, because I'm very much always connecting and feeling energies of other people. And today I really felt the energy of the world. I don't know, maybe because today is the day I was put into the world, but I just could really feel that today. But it was also humbling, because I could appreciate even more what I have thinking about that.
So, well, thank you for sharing that with everyone, and happy birthday again. I'm happy you were born. I think, can you imagine if the feeling that you felt this morning, if everyone could wake up to think that, just how different one day, if everyone just woke up to think about the gratitude they feel, but then also just that heaviness of the world, and just imagine all the things we could put into motion. But a lot of people, I guess they're not equipped to feel those things, because we've been programmed to be in our little box, and so what you're sharing, even with just the way you design your places and the things that you want to do, that in itself has a ripple effect for the person who has to be in them all day, and just, to give people the opportunity to reflect.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important for us, because we've really found our purpose, and we're almost using architecture and design as a vehicle to bring our kind of energy and healing to the world. And it's really being connected to something greater than ourselves. And since we tapped into that and like I shared earlier, I'm so fortunate that we're doing this together. It's almost like there's such an unfolding of events, and it's absolutely no coincidence that I found your book. And when I really had an intention when I was writing you the email, I said such an intention because I really wanted to meet you, because it's such a wonderful way how you're sharing wisdom with the world, and I just really wanted people in our network to be aware of that and really share that. And selfishly, I just wanted to hear from you and learn from you.
Yeah,
and
I'm
share
glad
your
I'm
energy.
here. Yes, and it also warms my heart that you found it at Castle Hot Springs, because I have not yet been there and I want to go there. So that was also a good little nudge, because I hear it's quite beautiful.
Yeah,
It's really fascinating. And actually, the owner of this building owns Castle Hot Springs, so
wow.
you're kind of connected energetically with him. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll put in a good word for you. Yeah,
I'll put that out there.
Yeah, that's
then.
right.
That I'll put my own little, make my own little intention spell.
Yeah, hopefully we'll try. His name's Mike Watts, and we're ideally trying to get him on the podcast, because we'd love to hear the story of how he, decided to develop that property, because that's sort of hospitality and wellness and those kind of destinations isn't his background. So it's going to be really intriguing to see how he steered in that direction later in his career. Amazing. Well, I have one question I'd like to ask to sort of wrap up, and it might be, I don't know if it's tricky to answer, but if you could just offer generally people one piece of advice of how they could live their life to get the most out of it and live their best life, is there just a simple anecdote that you could share?
Just a simple anecdote on how to just live your best life.
We've just been talking about there's no quick fixes.
I think, well, what I'll share is that because so many people come to see me that feel like somehow they're going backwards, or they don't know what their path is, or they're just, I just hear that often. And so my reminder to them and to anyone listening is that you've never gone off your path. You are always on your path. The path sometimes changes, it's up and down, but you're always moving forward. And I think once you really feel that deeply, then it just feels like you're making progress in some way. And to me, that's important.
That's beautiful.
Okay, that is perfect, yeah. I knew you'd have a great answer.
Not rehearsed.
No, not rehearsed. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great.
Thank you very much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yes.